Thank you for joining Direct Women's webinar on why corporate board diversity is more important than ever. My name is Kelsey Velma, and I'll be your technical moderator behind the scenes. I'm the Program and Marketing Manager here at Direct Women, and I'm excited to be hosting this session. Before I hand this over to our actual moderator, Denise Keene, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping notes. You should all be able to see the screen right now and hear my voice. The phone lines, however, are muted, so although all of you can hear me, we cannot hear you. That said, you can still ask questions, and we encourage you to do so. At the top right of your screen is the GoToWebinar panel. Just open the console, type a question, and hit submit. Feel free to submit questions at any time. Today's webinar will be approximately 1 hour with 40 minutes of content, followed by 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. Lastly, there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar that we hope you will complete. It is only 4 questions and should take no more than 2 to 3 minutes tops. With that, I would like to turn it over to Denise Keene to introduce the program and our distinguished panelists. Denise?
Thank you, Kelsey. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on why corporate board diversity is more important than ever. My name is Denise Keene, and I will be your moderator for the program. I am the former Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Altria Group, where we handled a variety of, rigorous legal and regulatory issues. While there, the corporate secretary, function reported to me. And I mention that because I think one of the things that we will talk about, if not directly today, indirectly today, is the importance of the role of the corporate secretary. My board service, at this point in time is basically in the nonprofit realm. I'm on the board of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, which is one of the top 10 museums in the world, and I've chaired their audit committee and currently chair their budget and finance committee, which is quite interesting in COVID days. I'm also a 2015 alumna of Direct Women and the Board Institute, and I'm currently the chair of Direct Women. Just to give you a little bit, I know you all know about Direct Women, but just to kind of make sure everybody is grounded, our mission is to increase the representation of women lawyers on corporate boards. Currently, and this is a great statistic that is, increasing, thank goodness, almost on a monthly basis as of late. Currently, over 35% of Direct Women Board Institute alumni have been selected to serve on corporate boards. Direct Women's role is to identify women who are basically in a position because they have the experience, independence, and business judgment to be on boards. Through our programs, we help position women lawyers to be ready for board service. We also serve as a resource for companies. I am so pleased to have Elisa Garcia and Sharon Bowen with me here today. They are a panel that has an amazing wealth of experience. Elisa and I share on the board of Direct Women, and Sharon and I have worked on and touched base on a number of different topics in the past. So let me start by asking Sharon and Elisa to share a little bit about your background, and if you're too modest, I will have to jump in.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, and I want to thank Direct Women for hosting this panel discussion on such an important topic. And I'm obviously delighted to join you and Elisa here today. You probably have my bio, but I'll give you a thumbnail of my background. I'm a former commissioner of the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I served in that capacity from June 2014 until October of 2017. I had the privilege of being appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the Senate to that role. The CFTC, the mandate basically was to oversee the $400 trillion swaps market in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Before that, I had been also appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the Senate to serve as vice chair, and then I took the role as acting chair of the Securities Investor Protection Corporation. This was during one of the most significant period of bankruptcies, including Lehman Brothers, Madoff, and MF Global. I had a 32-year career as a corporate lawyer, representing major corporations and financial institutions, including 23 of those years as a partner at Latham & Watkins. At Latham, I co-chaired and co-founded the Global Diversity Committee, our Women's Initiative, our Diversity Scholars Program, and other diversity initiatives at the firm. I currently serve on the board of the Intercontinental Exchange and two of its affiliates, the New York Stock Exchange and BAT. I also serve on the ICE Risk Committee. I'm a member of the board of directors of Neuberger Berman Group, which is a private 100% employee-owned company, an investment management firm with operations in over 35 countries, and I serve on its audit committee. I'm a partner of Cynical Women, which is a thought leadership platform focused on accelerating the economic empowerment of women and girls. And we have a Seneca Connect app, which you can download for free, as well as we have a Cynical Women podcast network, where we amplify the voices of women thought leaders and women entrepreneurs. We recently launched the 100 Women to Hear podcast on iHeart and Apple in recognition of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in the U.S. Although, as well known, it took another 45 years for all women to have the right to vote. With that, I'm really delighted to be here today.
Hi,
Thank you.
I'm Elisa Garcia. I too am an alum of the Direct Women program. I think it was 2011 when I went through it. And I am a board member of Dollarama, and I serve on the Nominating and Governance Committee. Dollarama is a Canadian retailer, dollar store retailer with probably over 1,200 stores in Canada and a growing presence, about a couple of hundred stores in Central America and Colombia, with further expansion plans in the Latin America region. I am, my day job, my full-time job is the Chief Legal Officer of Macy's. And prior to that, I've been with Macy's 4 years. Prior to that, I was with, as Chief Legal Officer of Office Depot and Domino's Pizza. Office Depot and Domino's Pizza are both global companies, a global footprint. And I also spent a number of years as regional counsel for Latin America, working for Philip Morris International, which gave me, a great opportunity to work in the Latin America region, mostly Central America and the Indian PAC countries. And I stress that because it'll fold into how I got on the Dollarama board. At Macy's, we have a strong .com business. We have retail stores. At Office Depot, we had retail stores and a very strong B2B business. At Domino's Pizza, technology business, franchise, and stores. All of these were customer-facing businesses. And I think, being in the C-suite of each of these organizations gave me just a deep knowledge of the strategic planning that's needed for a retail and customer-facing company, but also the international focus and the Latin America focus gave me, and I actually, prior to being a lawyer, lived and worked in Latin America. I think just gave me some unique skills that fell right squarely into what Dollarama needed. But I know we'll get to that a little later on. I'm also on the board of the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession. I'm on the advisory board of Corporate Pro Bono, and I think that's it right now.
So we have a busy panel. Okay, so let's get started. Our topic today is why corporate board diversity is more important than ever. So let's start with one or two grounding questions. Let me ask, when you both joined your respective boards, were you the only woman?
So I can go first. So when I joined the Intercontinental Exchange Board, I was the fourth woman and the second woman of color when I joined the board. For a brief period of time, there were just 3 women on the board. We're back to 4 as of August. That board seat, when I first joined the board, was a newly created seat. So when I joined the board, I increased the size of the board to 12 at that time.
I was the first woman at Dollarama, and I was the only woman for 4 years. Last year, I was joined by the next board member we added after me was also a woman. And I expect that the next one we add will also be a woman. The board, I'll just get into the next question because I know we're going to talk about diversifying the board and whether or how I helped do that. I was the product of a shareholder proposal. MDAC, which is an investor group, investor advocacy group in Canada, submitted a shareholder proposal to Dollarama, asking them why they don't have a woman on the board. And Canada has a law that is kind of diversify or explain. And they decided, okay, it's time to diversify. And they brought me on the board, and MDAC withdrew their shareholder proposal at the time. So I solved everybody's problems.
So Sharon, if we can just go back for a second, because you were in the fortunate position of, having a group of women and having an aspect of diversity that many boards don't. And many women, when they get on their first board, may be the only woman or maybe one of two. Can you just talk ever so briefly about what the importance is of raising the number of women so that, in a sense, your voice is more generally heard?
So when I joined the board, I think one of the first women on that board had basically been on the board since the beginning of the company, frankly. So she had been a long serving board member, had a lot of experience serving on that board. And then the second woman, also very accomplished, vice chairman of MasterCard, headed up one of the international operations. So again, someone who had a big platform and a big presence. And then the third woman, who had joined about 2 years before I did, the youngest member of our board. I think Jerry's probably, maybe she's 40 by now. And so a pretty diverse group of women, but it was clear that they had already had a seat at the table. I had no doubt that my voice was going to be heard. It partly also because I knew the company well, because I had regulated its clearinghouses. I had not regulated the New York Stock Exchange, but as a former commissioner, I knew the company pretty intimately. So I was pretty sure I was going to have a voice at the table.
Okay, so before we get into the sort of bulk of our questions, which focus on the importance of diversity on boards, I thought we might do a little bit of audience polling. All of us have worked in so many different ways to enhance diversity through our career, but board diversity is so important because that really does set strategic direction for companies, and it also is meant as a way to evaluate management's performance. So let's tee up a question. What is your expectation of corporate board diversity at this point in time? Okay, I love the answer. It will increase. That is how we are starting this conversation, and that is what we believe, and we believe the energy we're bringing to it will hopefully have it happen. So we have 88% of our respondents basically say it's going to increase. And I think that is really important. And that means we all have to continue working on that goal, because that's where it should absolutely go. I know all of us, from the answer to that question and from having a little bit of insight to the people who are interested in the types of webinars that we offer, I know you all think diversity is a business imperative. I mean, all of us have lived that. And, now we really want it to be a business imperative, inside the boardroom. So, tell me, do you both, you're both experienced directors. Do you think it is now viewed differently? Has diversity become more important in the boardroom? And from your personal experiences, how does it influence board decision making?
I'll start this one if you don't mind, Sharon. I look at my board, my Macy's board, for inspiration and as an example. While my Office Depot board was quite diverse, my Macy's board is very, very diverse. And Macy's recognized a long time ago that we are America's department store, so we need to look like America. We have, more than half of our board is female. Our lead director is a woman. The chair of our Nom and Gov is a Black woman. The vice chair is a Hispanic woman. We have, 6 women and 3 diverse women and 1 diverse male. So I have just a great role model. And I just, I see how having different viewpoints in the boardroom just really helps the company, especially a company that's serving all of America, just make better decisions, better, more probing decisions. Well done.
Yeah. You know, absolutely. I mean, I think the good news is we're beyond the sort of board diversity just being, being a business imperative, because we know that diverse boards really affect the bottom line. What I see increasingly so are CEOs in major corporations realizing that they have to be accountable to all of the stakeholders, not just the shareholders, but also to the employees, the customers, communities where they work. All expect to have diversity reflected in those organizations. And we also know that ESG is increasingly becoming important to investors as well. One of the signs, when I joined the New York Stock Exchange Board, one of the things we did was we co-founded a New York Stock Exchange Board Advisory Council last May or so. And one of the purposes is really to increase board diversity, but it was in response to CEOs saying, we want a network of diverse candidates. Where do we find them? And as we all know, networks are really important. And so this council is made up of 22 CEOs. My other 3 co-founder and co-chairman are women of color as well. And basically the CEOs are supposed to nominate up to 5 diverse candidates who are board ready. And I'm happy to say that we will be having our 3rd networking summit on September 14th, so in a few days. And that's where the CEOs and the members of the nominating and governance committees of their companies will be able to meet these candidates. And so with this new class, the 3rd class, we'll have 180 diverse candidates whose profiles will be part of a database. And that will be a directory where any New York Stock Exchange listed company, the 2,400 or so of them, their CEOs and their board members will have access to these candidates and their profiles. So that was one way to kind of solve, but we don't know any, and we kind of put the CEOs to work to help solve, the issue that they said they had. And so we're trying to, that won't be an excuse, but I think even more so, we all know that diverse perspectives make for a lot more robust decision making, as well. So I'm glad to see the 88% number up there because I'm very optimistic about our numbers increasing.
Let me just build on something you've said, and also goes back to Elisa describing her position on Dollarama. Every company has a different mix in terms of, what's important as it relates to committees. And, one of the things you'll hear in the course of this conversation is when you talk about people who are, very influential, where are they in an organization? Where are they on a board? I mean, Nom and Gov has really taken on, I think, a very unique role now. And, Lisa, you're on the Dollarama, Nom and Gov, Sharon, you were mentioning as part of this advisory board, it's really getting to Nom and Gov. So, thoughts on how that speaks to how even that committee has, to some extent, been elevated within what I would say the way in which boards influence, corporate dynamics.
As Sharon mentioned earlier, ESG issues are becoming, front and center, the most, focused on and discussed board issues there are, other than strategy and trying to stay out of bankruptcy for us retailers. But, and I'm finding, at least at Office Depot and at Dollarama, at Office Depot, at Macy's for sure, the ESG issues are overseen by the Nom and Gov, group, because they just see it kind of part and parcel of what their purview is. And ensuring that we have diversity on the board is also part and parcel of their purview. So I definitely see, Nom and Gov rising in its stature. It's also the committee that's most often when each C-suite member has their own committee that they're responsible for, and Nom and Gov is usually closely aligned with the corporate secretary and or the general counsel. And because of that, I think general counsel have a particular ability to be influential.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about, what we've been talking about is how, diversity is really important. Boards have been focused on it. It's, something that we've seen some really good success. But let's talk about the past 6 months, right? What we have all seen, whether it is the COVID pandemic, whether it is the increased focus on social justice issues, whether it's issues around racism in the country. I mean, this is basically our world and the news that we see every single day. How is this influencing boards? I mean, clearly there are a whole series of legal concerns that they have to have, but there are also, I think, a whole series of ethical concerns that they have. How is it influencing the way in which they think about what they do and the way in which they plan to satisfy and fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to the company, the shareholder, and their general stakeholders in general?
Yeah, I think, with the murder of George Floyd, it really was, I think, so disturbing for the whole world to watch that corporations felt that they had to respond, and many of them did so. Then they started looking at their own organizations to figure out, what roadblocks were there within their own organizations that prevented, progress for diverse employees. I think it helped to shine a light on the huge gaps of the wealth and economic disparities with, Black household wealth being 10% of white household wealth, from Black unemployment being double that of white unemployment, and obviously the huge wage disparities that have always been there. And so, almost every corporation made a statement and looked at their own shortcomings. And many of them went further than just making statements to promote, equal justice. Many of them made large donations to civil rights organizations, to historically Black colleges, to CDFIs. They also committed to make diversity and inclusion a priority for their organizations. And so what I found, even sort of my experience, had been that some white male board members who have been on boards for many, many years that I spoke with said, Sharon, it's time for me to give up my seat because I don't want to be a barrier to not having a diverse board. And so I think it was a reckoning for everyone to kind of, look within as well as look without to kind of see, why are where we are today? What can we do about it? And, I do think the discussion, as people say, it's not, it's a movement. It's not a moment, it's definitely a movement. And that continues, that is happening, from regulators, the financial industry looking at, including Congress, as to why we have no Black regulators of financial markets. And, everyone is looking at this through different lenses, rightly so.
And I believe that, while I believe, Macy's and many other, I'm sure, nom and gov committees have always indicated that race and ethnicity and male-female diversity was important on a board. I think the recruiting firms are recognizing it themselves and just being a lot more responsive and digging deeper and fishing in other pools that perhaps they never fished in before. They have their candidates. It's easy. They pull them out. But now they're going further and wider. So the recruiters themselves are helping.
The interesting thing has been there's always been a focus, and the question has been, what kind of accountability will there be for delivering against that, whether it's a commitment or, whether it's an expressed, desire to achieve a goal. So what is the accountability? I'm sure, many of the people on the phone today are lawyers, and I'm sure that the counseling that's going on with boards, speaks to, shareholder proposals, it speaks to disclosures, it speaks to a whole variety of additional events that will, I think, keep this issue front and center. So, I mean, what do you think is going to be the ongoing sort of reaction? Is this going to be a systemic process now going forward? Or is this, I've got to increase my numbers now and, then I'm in a good place? I mean, how do you think, and I'm not asking you about your board specifically, But, as very seasoned board members, people who see what goes on inside a boardroom is this changing my numbers, or is this changing my attitude towards what I really need and what my broad range of stakeholders want as it relates to corporate governance?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see it being very long range, and as it should be. I mean, there is no silver bullet answer to this, and you can't solve it by just adding bodies. You really do have to do the hard work, and I think many corporations are doing sort of internal audits. They're looking at why are white men so overrepresented in the C-suite? What barriers have been in place to have made that be the case? 32 years ago when I started the practice of law, it used to be, well, there are not that many women in law school. There are not that many women who it's a pipeline issue. We all know the pipeline issue disappeared like decades ago. And so, it's the accountability is going to be widespread, I think. And then, personally, I frankly think it is a systemic risk to not have a diverse board. As a regulator, I was pushing for companies to disclose the makeup of their boards of directors and their senior management teams, because as an investor who cares about ESG matters, especially, and as their companies are being scored on their ESG as well. Again, as a member of the risk committee, I would consider a systemic risk for any company that is not taking diversity and inclusion to the level of trying to figure out how to fix it within their organizations and within their communities.
Sharon, I agree 100%. And I think while ESG was at the forefront and becoming more and more important, and diversity and inclusion as an important piece of that, I believe that the most recent events and the very, horrific, horrible witnessing of the death of George Floyd just kind of, I think it shook America, and not just America, it shook corporate America. And when you shake corporate America, things change. Things happen. And I'm seeing so many more conversations at the CEO and C-suite level, the CEO action group that has been formed, the commitment that the CEOs of the Fortune 500 are making to provide some of the best of their company for a 2-year minimum fellowship to find the ways to systemically change corporate America as well as our policy. This has a life much greater than nom and gov committees.
So that is so encouraging to hear. One of the things that historically we have heard in the past is, oh, I'm looking for these candidates, but I just can't find them. There are not enough qualified people out there. So I take it from your comments that you think we are in an environment where people are truly looking at the skill sets that they need and the voices that they need to hear, so that there's not a sort of, a fallback on, oh, I've looked really hard, but they're just not there.
Yeah, no more excuses. They know that's not an excuse anymore.
Okay, good. We're putting that one to rest. All right, so I want to turn to the audience for a second. I really would like to hear what the audience thinks on how we can, influence, board diversity, and who can influence board diversity, because I think that will lead to an interesting conversation. So, Kelsey, could you help us, and could you put up the polling questions? So, in my role as general counsel, in my role as outside counsel, and as a sitting or retired director, I think those are all, great answers. One of the things that we talked about ever so briefly before is when you kind of talk about the general counsel, whether some GCs are corporate secretaries, some, like in my case, I had the corporate secretary report to me. I think that's an important contributor. Plus, if you have a GC who's in the inner, I call it the inner C-suite. There's the C-suite, then there's the inner C-suite. If you're in the inner C-suite, you can also help identify candidates. And, outside counsel also, constantly called in to give advice to the boards. I am sure outside counsel is making presentations now on what boards might face in terms of, some of the shareholder issues coming up. And then, of course, anybody on a board. What I'd like to do is even sort of broaden that conversation and talk about, how do we really sort of tap in to a broader network of people, and how do we try to ask them to kind of all work together to try to keep focused on diversity. I mean, they're white women, they're this, that. Let me ask our panelists who are, very committed to this issue, where you think we can look to kind of galvanize even more support.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see this as a great opportunity for everyone to use their platforms and to to really work together. One of the things that I tell, when I'm asked by CEOs or private equity founders about what steps can they take, I mean, sometimes that they will say, like, what can I, as a white rich old man, tell you, tell the world about diversity? And my answer is a lot. You need to have a seat at the table, and everyone has a role to play in this. And then so everyone should use their platforms, whether it's inside the boardroom or outside of the boardroom, to make recommendations for women and diverse candidates for their boards. Obviously, the more of us that are around the table, that's a greater network effect. I have not yet read the report, but I understand that the recent Hydrick and Struggles survey that was released this week had noted the progress, the gender progress, with something like 44% of the new appointments to the Fortune 500 boards were women in 2019, and that's a really good number. We want to keep seeing that number go up. The bad news is the non-white board appointments have really stalled the last 3 years at 23%. With the percentage of Black board members actually going down from 11% to 10% from 2018 to 2019. So I think we all have to be allies of each other and to work together to bring our networks. We can cross-pollinate our networks, and I think we should. Whether it's sharing directories, having links, sharing opportunities across all of our networks. And obviously, if you've got a seat at the table as a corporate secretary or as a general counsel, you know when it is that your company is going to be looking for a director. And so speak up. Speak up.
And I think it's also incumbent on all of us who want to be on corporate boards to let people know we want to be on corporate boards, and to because not everyone knows and not everyone wants to be on a board. So you need to let people know, and you also need to be ready. That's why I love the Direct Women program. Just a little a plug here for Direct Women. Direct Women helped me understand how to repackage my skills. I've been a lawyer for 30 plus years, but how do I talk about all of the strategic work I've done in the C-suite? How do I talk about my deals where, yeah, I did a big merger. I merged Office Depot and Office Max, but that's just a deal. It's the achieving of the synergies, the tracking of them, and how you get merger synergies, and just all of those skills that you don't even know as a lawyer you have, and you have to really think about them and repackage them and be ready to tell the world that you have them and how you can help a company.
That's so true, Lisa. I was comparing with our candidates for the New York Stock Exchange Advisory Board, just comparing the resumes of the male candidates versus the female ones, and it's really the female descriptions were just more descriptive. Like you said, I've done many major acquisitions. For the male candidates, it's like, I led the company to the largest profits ever in the history of all mankind, kind of statements. So it is true. I mean, we really do need to think about the different skill sets that we bring to the table and find a way to articulate those in a powerful way. Obviously, being truthful. We don't have to make up stories or anything like that, but repackaging, the skill sets that you actually have.
I had a question I was going to say it in case we had time, but you're both, in a sense, discussing it and referring to it. So let me ask it now, because I really think it's important for people who are thinking about board service and trying to make the transition, because, in Direct Women, our mission is getting, women lawyers on corporate boards. And, one of the things that, I've observed over the years is that, one of the skills lawyers oftentimes use in order to get good advice over to their clients and get their clients to accept good advice is to always kind of take the back seat and wait, what's the answer? My good advice is great if in fact my client thinks it's their good idea. And if any of my clients are on the phone, I don't mean you, but in reality, I mean, that's what we do. So our success is not premised on being self-promoters. So tell me how you got better at being a self-promoter. Because if we're keeping with our theme, diversity is really important and we need skilled and accomplished women on boards. How do we become better promoters? And you just kind of led me into that question.
I'm a horrible self-promoter. I'm sorry. I am the quintessential example of what not to be. But I do believe my participation in Direct Women helped me see that. And, Direct Women helped me look at my resume very differently and look at my skills very differently and help me pitch them very differently, so that I went through the program in 2011 and my board opportunity came up in 2015. I wasn't really actively looking, but when this came up, it was just, such a great fit that I was able to talk to the chair of Nom and Gov, to the CEO and other board members about my, not just my retail experience and my C-suite experience and my strategy experience, but their expansion plans were in Latin America and the unique skills that no one on the board or at the company had those skills. And I think, my ability to talk about those and how, I lived and worked in the country and negotiated contracts and major transactions in Spanish and understood, what the tax structure in Colombia is and how unfair it is. These are all things that they knew they were going to be able to draw upon. So I just got better at talking about them because it was just a great fit.
Yeah. I would say, I can be good sometimes. I'm not consistent. It just depends on, who the audience is and what they already know about me, or whether I'm trying to persuade them. But it's sort of in that respect, one of the things that Lisa said was, I made it known to people that when I left government that I was going to be looking for a corporate board. I wasn't quite sure what kind of board yet. And I think one of the reasons I got approached, obviously my regulatory expertise helped, but I think what was equally important was in that setting, people watch what you do. So I kind of gained a reputation for being fair and thoughtful and deliberate in my decision-making process. I became known for someone who could bring, diverse voices to the table. And, the committee that I sponsored at the CFTC, I had like 30 members from different diverse backgrounds to come up with a game plan to make a difference. And so people saw me do that. I think, having the power to bring other people together, which lawyers are really good at that. And so that's a shorthand way of saying that, people watch you. They watch you on your nonprofit boards. They watch you, at your school boards, at your church boards. People are watching, and it's normally like people are not saying, well, I need that auditing skill set. What they're looking for is, who is that person that I know is going to be the problem solver, it's going to roll up the sleeves, it's going to be around the table, it's going to bring diverse perspectives, that when they don't know the answer, they're going to say, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to find the right person to get us the right answer. And so you want to be known for something like that, to be valuable. So when companies are looking for board members, they already will see that in you. And I think, when we were talking, one of my board positions came from celebrating a girlfriend's birthday party. You know, there were 4 of us around the table. And because they knew that I was interested in a board, you know, her spouse had just won a company that knew they were interested in diversity. And she goes, you know, I think I got a board for you. And so you just never know where you're gonna get that call or why you got the call, but mostly it'll be because people know you for something. So you'll be known for something good at least, okay? And that's gonna really help.
Great, I love those answers. Okay, I want to make sure that we give our audience some time to ask questions. I mean, we've covered a number of different topics. Kelsey, can you help us see if in fact we have some questions that people want to ask?
Absolutely. So first, I will just start for anyone who may have joined us just a couple minutes late. I'd like to remind everyone that to ask any of our panelists a question, please use the GoToWebinar console. It's at the top right of your screen. Just open the console and type a question and hit submit, and then that will land on our end. So it does look like we actually already have a number of questions that have come in. I'll start off with this one. This person is concerned about diversity being a check the box for boards. Diversity isn't meaningful without inclusion. So the question is, to what degree are women's and people of color's voices really listened to and heeded? Said another way, do you ever have to fight for the floor?
I don't, but
Sharon, you want to start with that one?
well, I was gonna say, you know, because in my instance, I joined 4 of the women, and you know, was the second woman of color, and so I wasn't a check the box. But in any event, I think companies who are just trying to check the box, you need to do your own research. You don't have to join a board if it's not a good fit for you. Okay, so you need to make sure you understand the culture of the place that you want to join, and if that company doesn't have diversity on the boards, you need to find out why that is the case. And you need to interview and research the other members on that board of directors. I would not join a board where I didn't get a good answer in terms of what the commitment is. I mean, I just wouldn't personally do that. And I wouldn't suggest anybody do that, frankly.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about, you know, the Macy's board. No, I don't think anybody ever has to fight for the floor. You know, we have a lot of diversity, and it's just part of who we are. Diversity and inclusion at Macy's, it's part of our fabric. The Dollarama board, you know, as I said, I was the first woman, and I was there. You know, I think they found me specifically. They added a seat on the board for a woman, and I certainly did my homework. I saw a lot of synergies with my skill set and what the company was doing in the area of the world the company was expanding in. But I also had another, you know, less of a noticeable one, but, you know, corporate, a lot of reasons, a lot of times there hasn't been a lot of diversity in the boardroom because the boardroom has to be a very collegial place in the sense that you've got a group of people that come in 4 to 5 times a year. They helicopter in, they see what's going on, they synthesize, they ask questions, they probe. They're usually really smart, but they have so much to do in such a short period of time. And yes, diverse views have to be there, and questions and pushing and probing is really important, but it has to be a collegial group in the sense you have to be able to work together. And I think that there's been kind of a lack of diversity on boards because folks have always gone to the same circles to get people that they know they would like to go out and play golf with or have a beer with. And it's expanding. I think that there's less of that, but you still have to find those commonalities. You still, the board, even if you look different, even if you're a woman, if you're a Hispanic, Latina woman, or a Black woman, you still have to know that your voice is going to be heard. And you do that by finding other commonalities. In my case, Dollarama had been years before I joined, maybe 6 years before I joined, Bain Capital made a major investment in the company. And Bain had since taken the company public, sold out of it. But, you know, Bain has a way of doing things. They usually bring in some professional management to support the management that's there. They run their board meetings in a certain way. They have certain metrics that they focus on. And, you know, I'm a product of that. Domino's Pizza was purchased by Bain Capital 100%, and I was the first external hire after the CEO. So I know the Bain system. I know the Bain partners. I know how to speak their language, and they were able to kind of vet me with the Bain partners, and you know, they knew and I knew that I would fit in. So you still have to find a way to fit in a collegial group.
Mhm.
So what I take just to, because I think the answers we just got to these, the very good question that was asked is really important, because it speaks to, you know, board service is a very substantive thing, but there's some real art involved to ensure that you help facilitate the inclusion that the board should be seeking, if in fact you've joined the right board, and to try to make that transition happen sooner rather than later, and as, you know, in an effortless way. So I think that those are very important points. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, what other questions do we have?
All right, another one. What are the top 3 skills or experiences that are valued in a board candidate?
Okay, who wants to take that one first?
3 is hard.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, certainly listening is number 1.
Right.
Critical thinking, and you know, just the ability to synthesize a large amount of information very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Yeah, the ability to dissect, you know, complex issues, and not being afraid to be a voice at the table. I mean, I think that's just really, really important to, you know, own that platform, and you know, and be bold about it.
Let me ask a follow-up that I think is also implied by the question, which is, you know, oftentimes when people go on board searches, you know, boards are looking, they have a matrix, they have a, you know, set of skills that they want. And so oftentimes they're looking for very specific skills. Other times, even though they might be looking for skills, they're really looking for what you both described: problem solvers, thinkers, you know, strategic planners, you know, people who can help assess risk. You know, how do you manage both of those in deciding if in fact you're a fit for a board, and whether or not that's a board you should consider pursuing?
Yeah. But,
Go ahead, Sharon.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I would do my homework there. Again, I think I mentioned before, you know, do research on each board member, you know, about their backgrounds. Obviously, you want to know the industry extremely well. You want to know the competitive landscape. You want to know how, you know, macro policies may affect the future of the organization. It should be something that you're excited about, because, I mean, frankly, there's a lot of reading. I mean, the board material packages are like tabs of hundreds and hundreds of pages. And obviously, we as lawyers know how to dissect, you know, 300 pages, you know, at a shot. You know, but it makes a big difference if those are 300 pages about a topic that you are excited about, versus, you know, there's some boards that I just wouldn't want to be on because the subject matter is not for me personally. And so I couldn't see, you know, reading 300 pages on some subject matter. So having a sense of what you are excited about, I think that's going to convey, you know, once you are selected for a board, it's a way to connect with that board member. You know, there's nothing like knowledge and research to have that be a commonality, if you will, in both looking at the board you want to be on, and then being comfortable on the board once you join that board.
Every company just about, you know, publishes a skills matrix in their proxy, and it lays out the skills that the board thinks are important. And you know, right now, tech and digital are huge. So if you've got tech and digital experience, and you're a diverse candidate, I think you will be sought after. Another one that, you know, is a focus is social media. You know, marketing has always been an important one, but specific experience in social media and how to reach the younger audience, and data analytics. Those are kind of the hot areas that I know, you know, we've added and stressed in our skills matrix.
Thank you. Next question, Kelsey.
All right, so this one of the reasons it has been so important to place women and people of color on boards is because corporate boards equal power. This person wants to know, now that boards are diversifying, will it actually translate to more power for those people, or will power just migrate to other forums, perhaps more informal networks that still comprise mainly of white men?
That you mean, is there going to be a shadow market? Is that what you're saying? I think that's what the question is saying. Is it's like, so are you saying like once we diversify the board, all the powerful men are going to go off in the corner and do something else? I don't think so.
I don't either. No. I think, you know, having diversity in the boardroom will lead to more diversity in all levels of corporate America, because it will be a priority for that board to hear more about the diversity efforts in not just the C-suite, but in succession planning below that, and, you know, at all levels in the company.
I think we have time for one or two more here. In the interest of increasing diversity, will there be an increasingly broad look at the required credentials, i.e. will boards begin to look beyond CEOs and CFOs as ideal candidates?
Yes, they've already started to do that. I mean, if you look at the data and look at the numbers, they figured out that there were only 30 women CEOs of major corporations, and there were thousands of board seats. So if you do the math, you're not going to have a diverse board that way. So the answer is yes. By necessity, to have a diverse board, you have to go beyond the thinking. I think since doing that, they have realized that, oh, this actually, the discussion is much better, much broader, much more robust. We're being a lot more responsive to our customers and our shareholders, because people are looking at our issues through a different lens, and so it changes the dynamic within the boardroom setting as well. And so you can't, it's in a powerful way, and again in a way that affects not just the bottom line, but it affects the culture of a place. And I think almost every CEO today is looking at the culture of their organizations, as well, and seeing them as more than just a profit-making, institution, but seeing corporations sort of beyond that.
I think that I'm trying to, Kelsey, just remind me, what was the overlying thread of that question? I want to make sure I'm responding to the original question and not to what Sharon was saying.
You can respond to what I said.
So will there be, an increasingly broad look at the required credentials?
Right. Got
will
it.
boards begin to look beyond CEOs and CFOs?
Got it. And Sharon, I agree that they're already doing that, but not just CEO and CFO, but even going deeper than the C-suite itself, to the VP level, whereas you never would have seen that before. And at Macy's we brought in someone in the tech area that is a VP at a major tech company, and he's younger, and he's he's Black, and he just brings in a completely different perspective, and it's like when he speaks, everybody listens. It's very cool.
It's interesting because when you think about a board, I mean, a board gets together, how many times a year? 6 times, 8 times, pick your number. And they're hopefully, people who have experience and, very discerning ways of, collecting information and asking questions. But at the end of the day, they have to depend on one another to make sure, because they'll never be management. They'll never know as much as their management knows, and they get so much of their information from management. And, you have a great management team, but nonetheless, your success is also dependent on the board members that you sit with who can bring another question that needs to be asked. And I think it really ties back to, today with diversity and the social justice issues that we're facing. I mean, you could make an argument that really smart board members realize this is probably the most important thing that they can do to ensure that not only that they'll be successful, but that their corporations will be successful.
I agree.
So next question.
Yes, I think this will probably be our last one since I know we have a hard stop. How do we get women in board leadership?
How do we get women in? Say that again.
Someone wants to know, how do we get women in board leadership?
You mean to be the independent lead director?
And chairing committees. I mean, Sharon, you already chair committees. I know my lead director is a woman. My head of Nom and Gov is a woman. Once you join a board, it takes a little time to kind of learn the business, but you have to let the lead director or the chair know that you want to step up, especially if there's an area that you have some deep expertise and can offer a different perspective.
I agree.
I mean, the board is always happy to share the work. Trust me.
Yes. In fact, I was going to say, be careful of what you ask, okay? Because you may get it more than you know. So you want to don't volunteer for everything.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left, and I want to take those minutes to basically thank our amazing panelists. I mean, you really have brought, so much perspective. I've loved working with you both, and I hope the audience got a chance to ask the questions that they wanted. I mean, otherwise, I'm sure that there are ways they can reach out to us at Direct Women, because we're always interested in input. But really, thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Elisa. That was great. I also want to thank the audience for joining us. I hope you liked this webinar. One of the things that Direct Women does is we offer programming. And one of the things that's coming up on September 22nd is an amazing webinar, which is going to be a, kind of a book discussion with Valerie Jarrett. It's going to be top tips for building board-ready connections. So I think that should be very, very good. And we have a whole series of things that we're planning going forward. I would also ask that you complete the survey. We really want your input. We want to make sure that what we do is something that resonates with you. We have a great time doing it, and we really believe that there are topics that we've observed that people have been very interested in the past, but your input is really very important to us. So with that, I want to thank you. Thank everybody involved. And Kelsey, really thank you for your assistance in helping us get this all organized. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, great. Bye-bye.